Hi guys, it's Andy from Man City Fan TV, and I'm really excited tonight to have two Melbourne City, Manchester City supporters branch members, and important ones as well. So really lucky to have them both on board. First off, we've got Stephen. How are you, Stephen?
I'm very well, Andy. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
And we've got Alan. How are you, mate?
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
Well, I've met Alan before at the Etihad, but I've never met Stephen.
Yep.
It was, yeah. And like I said, I'm really pleased and honoured to have him on Man City Fan TV, and I'm really interested to learn a little bit about, more about their background. So I'm going to start with you, Stephen. Since we've not met before, do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about your background to Manchester City and how you ended up in Melbourne?
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. I've supported Man City since 1966. Which is a long time ago, and I came to Melbourne, Australia, with the whole family in 1974, and we lived actually in Droylsden. But as a kid, I grew up in Bradford, which is in Queen Street, and unbelievably, that's where the Manchester City headquarters are built now. So I actually went to the city headquarters a couple of years ago. I was in an office there, and it was basically where my house used to be.
Wow, fantastic! So, really?
Yeah. So it's quite freaky, who would have ever thought that? But yeah, we came in 1974 with the whole family, and obviously it's a long way away, and so it's great to have a supporters club. So you can keep in touch, and of course in those days there wasn't any internet. We had to watch, listen to the games on BBC World Service.
God, wow! So some of the younger fans are going to be going, what's that? The BBC World Service? Well, obviously the radio.
That's showing your age, Steve.
Yeah, it is the radio. There was no Alexas, and there was no iPhones and things like that back in those days. It was literally you were being connected to the UK via the radio and the World Service. Brilliant.
Manchester City 2, Manchester United 0.
Well, Alan, what's your story? How come you ended up in Melbourne?
Well, I'm from Whitefield in Manchester, and I've been a City fan since probably 1970. My father took me to a City game against Coventry at Main Road years ago, and I was a season ticket holder ever since. And then I emigrated in 2007 to Melbourne through work. Got offered a position over here, and I took it, never thinking that we'd get millions and millions of pounds. I thought we're never going to see City win anything ever again. And I was there in '76 when Dennis Stewart scored the overhead kick at Wembley with my father, and then saw them obviously go up and down. Went to Division 2, home and away, all them years, and then obviously when I came out here the year after, they got the Sheikh involved in the club, and my father was giving me stick.
You missed out by that much, didn't you? You were thinking a few more years.
My father was ringing me and saying, I bet you wish you were at home now, don't you?
Do either of you get back to the? I know, obviously, Alan, I met you at the Etihad, but do both of you get back that often? I know it's a long way.
Yeah. I was back there a couple of years ago, and with Alan, and we did an interview with Ian Cheeseman, and so I get back at least every couple of years.
Brilliant.
I come back every year, well, usually the end of every season, apart from this year, obviously.
Yeah.
So I've been back every year to watch City.
Wonderful. Well, my first question, obviously, I want to ask you is about the Manchester City Melbourne supporters branch, because it is a very big supporters branch, and as you know, on Man City Fan TV, we've spoken to branches across the world. So, Stephen, I'll come to you. What's your part in the Melbourne branch, and tell me a little bit about it.
Okay, I'm the secretary of the Melbourne branch, and we always had a supporters club, but we decided to go official in 2010. And at that stage, Alan and I started the club, and there were just 12 of us, just 12 members. Today, we have 270. And one of the great things about the club is it's not just a club for Manchester expats. It's actually a club for everyone in Melbourne, Australia, that supports Manchester City. We have 26 nationalities. We have 270 members. There are 5 supporters clubs in Australia, and in fact, the Melbourne branch is bigger than all of the others combined. So it's just been fantastic how people have wanted to join us, and you know, it's surprising how many City fans there are over here in Australia, and we know that we still haven't found them all, so we keep searching.
So, Alan, how obviously you said you set it up in 2010. Where do you meet, and how do you advertise for people to join?
We use this social media, Facebook, Instagram, those type of media type outlets, and obviously Melbourne City help as well with spreading the word, which we're connected to, and we meet in the Imperial Hotel, which is on the corner of Burke and Spring Street, opposite Parliament, which is a big sports pub, and we have the branch in there. We do share the pub with Liverpool, unfortunately. So we do have separate. It's now got to the stage where we do have separate rooms. Where we can't keep in the same room as them, obviously. So we tend to go upstairs in the function room, and they have all downstairs. They have unbelievable amounts of fans in Melbourne. You know, we're talking thousands, and they fill the place usually. But we've got a very healthy supporters club. So we meet in there since 2000. It's grown slowly. It's sort of increased the last couple of years because we've held some big functions. One of them was which was the charity one when the Manchester bomb went off, where we combined with Manchester United Supporters Club.
All right.
And ran a big charity function where we had bands on, auctions, you name it, we had it in there. So we've had plenty of functions in there. That really helped grow the branch. We made, I think it was about $14,000, $15,000 worth.
Wow.
No, we made $18,300, and $9,000 of that went to the bombing fund via the Manchester City Supporters Club, and 9,000 went via Manchester United. And it was great to to get together. Yeah, and that's one thing about football. Often football supporters are looked upon as hooligans and all the rest of it, but when you look at how they get together in times of need, it's just amazing.
We're seeing that now, aren't we? Certainly with things which we'll come to shortly. But Stephen, tell me a little bit more about. Obviously, you've set up the club, the supporters club. You advertise via sort of social media and things like that. Have you had any sort of ex-players or anybody to do with the club down at your branch?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've been very, very fortunate. I mean, one of the most surprising things that we had was 3 seasons ago, Ferran Soriano walked into the Imperial.
Really?
And he bought us all a beer, and he just watched the game with us, and he was just like one of the boys. So that was absolutely amazing. Fantastic. We have, of course, we had Micah Richards recently with the trophy tour, all 4 trophies. We've had Paul Dickov, who comes quite frequently. He's a regular. And of course, we have Brian Marwood, because of course Brian looks after Melbourne City, and so he comes and watches a lot of the games with us and gives us a lot of help. So we're very, very fortunate. And we had Pep Guardiola come last season. He came for a little meeting with the Melbourne City Junior Blues, and some of us got to meet with Pep, and he signed all our shirts. And he was just a really nice guy, just one of the boys. So it's fantastic.
Brilliant. Alan, I'll come to you. Do you, as City fans, obviously, our association with Melbourne City, do you congregate as a group to watch the Melbourne City games, or, do you... Oh, we just lost him there.
1 second.
Oh, it's okay. Well, I'll come to you while he's sorting his camera out. He's back. Oh, no, he's back.
He's back.
Yeah, you probably still heard me there, but what my point was, considering you're in Melbourne, we've got another club in Melbourne, which is Melbourne City. Do you guys get together to watch those games, or is it mainly just the Manchester City games in particular you all congregate in the Imperial to watch?
Well, it's funny because there's two teams in Melbourne. There's Melbourne Victory, which is more established. It's been over here for years. And when Melbourne Heart, as it originally was, came about, and then they tried to get a fan base going. Then when Man City took them over, obviously we were all really excited when that happened. And we all had to. I was watching Victory at the time. I had to swap over. I couldn't. My heart ruled my head there.
Yeah.
And we all went over. So there is a group of City fans that all sit together and go to the games to watch. We do support them as well. And obviously because it's City Connection, and now they're playing in Sky Blue, which really happy because they did used to play in red, which we didn't like. So
yeah.
That's a bit of controversy because the second kit is red. So, and it's that doesn't sit well with me, but we do go, and they are a good help.
Yeah. Well, obviously, sorry, go on, Steve.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, Alan, the red and white kit is no longer actually for the second kit, fortunately for Melbourne City, and so you'll see now they're playing in a grey and white strip, which is fantastic. And yeah, we all Andy, we all have season cards, and we go and watch Melbourne City. Brilliant. And yeah, it's amazing because sometimes when the Melbourne City games finish, Manchester City are playing the next morning. So it's sort of a long day.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I mean, how great is it to be able to support under one umbrella, two teams, your first team and a second team as well in your own city?
Absolutely amazing. And like Alan, I was a Victory supporter, but when City took over, obviously we just had to follow City, and it's just amazing to be in Melbourne chanting City. You know, I never thought that the day would come. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate here.
Brilliant. Right. Okay. So we've learnt a little bit about you. Fortunate. I have been to Melbourne a couple of times out there, and it's a wonderful it's a beautiful city. One of my favourites in the world. So moving on. We're going to talk obviously about what's currently happening in the world, and I obviously ask the question of all, not just the people I interact with on the Friday Night Social, but you may have seen those episodes, and we talk to people in Washington DC, to people in Serbia who are City fans, and there's a different perspective. Even though we're all going through a similar thing, there's more restrictions than others depending on where you are in the world. So how is this? I'm going to come to you first, Alan. How is this? How's the coronavirus, the COVID-19 thing going down in Melbourne, and what's happening and how it's affecting everybody?
Well, I live near the city, where Steve lives further out, and
right.
They've gone full lockdown in the city centre and around the inner cities, and now in Melbourne, in the regions outside Melbourne. But obviously, I've noticed a huge difference. I'm working from home, like the people down in Manchester.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've noticed that people are doing as they're told over here, which you see news reports from the UK, which a lot of people are not doing as they're told and having parties in Manchester. They're not tending to do that in Melbourne. Even when they're going for walks around the parks and stuff like that, they're keeping the distance. They don't sit on the grass or anything like that. There was a bit of a problem in Sydney when they went on the beach, as it's well documented, but that's now stopped. So to be fair, and it's not as bad over here. I think we've only got something like 49 cases of people dying in Australia on the whole, and something like 14 in Melbourne have died, and there's nowhere near as much cases. I think a lot of that's to do with, from day one, they shut the airport. They've stopped people coming in from anywhere in the world, and even stopping people interstate as well. So stop people moving out.
So you couldn't even cross borders between states?
They've blocked borders on the roads, blocked borders on the airports. Tassie, where my mother and father are now, and my sister, they basically shut the island down completely from day one, which is a good thing over here. And I think that's proved dividends. I think that's been the biggest difference between the UK and here, is they've taken it really seriously, because they've seen what's happened to Europe, and obviously Australian TV and people follow the UK heavily because obviously we're part of the empire, as you want to call it. So they see what's happening, but obviously it's improving, but obviously it's affecting the economy. You know, I've gone quiet at work being in IT recruitment, and it's affecting other people's businesses as well. So obviously we don't want it to go on too long because it will really affect everyone.
Yeah. What about you, Stephen? What's your take on it?
Very similar to Alan's. You know, it's really disappointing, and of course it affects football supporters all over the world, and our meetings at the Imperial where we watch the games are obviously all cancelled. The pub's closed. The city's like a graveyard. We can't get together. So it's very disappointing. But we just have to, you know, obey all the lockdown restrictions and hope that we get over this as soon as we can. I can tell you this: it's going to be one hell of a party at the Imperial when we can all get back together.
I bet it is. I absolutely bet it is. Well, I mean that's good news, certainly, to realise that, you know, our country has, you know, captured this early, done all the right things. I mean, me and my wife were only today discussing the fact of how come we're still getting flights into the UK and people, no one's being tested and they're coming in from all over, and it's like, what the hell is going on? You know, I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely mental. And yes,
it's weird because I see the people on the tube. I saw that on television from Sky News, and people, and it's packed. I'm thinking, are they mad? Just thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
And you've got to think how many of those are actually people who do need to commute to go because the frontline workers, and how many are just using the tube just to go to wherever. And it's crazy. But leads us on to the next point, which I want to ask you, is obviously it's affected football massively. As we know, and there are so many different angles that we can come at this, but I did say a couple of weeks ago when I did a video all about football in the future, and I gave my personal suggestion as a way of trying to counteract all the arguments against should it continue, should it be behind closed doors, things like that. And I said I wouldn't discuss it again on the channel. I said that is it. I am done with it. I am not talking. But I'm going to make an exception in this case because I'm talking to two guys over in Melbourne, which is a little bit different than doing the live vlogs in the evenings. So I'm going to ask you about what your thoughts are. I'm going to come to you first, Stephen. Where do you think this is going to take us? Firstly, with regards to football, and it was very interesting. I've been chatting this afternoon to Ian Cheeseman on Twitter, direct messaging each other, and he put out an excellent podcast talking about the morality of football and what do certain City fans think about football and should it go on and should it be played behind closed doors. And it wasn't one that I wanted to get involved with because I said my piece and that was it. I was going to pull away from all this debate, but it was that good. I messaged him and we got into a bit of a chat about our thoughts on it. But I'll make an exception tonight, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. Where do you stand on that question that Ian posed to his guests? So on the morality of talking now about playing behind closed doors in June, and FIFA and UEFA and their decisions of trying to get competition finished. And I don't know. I'm just going to leave it's one big, massive melting pot of a question. I'm going to leave it over to you, Stephen. You can have your say. So there you go.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It is a difficult question, and there is a lot of morality issues about. But for me, I can't see any point in playing games behind closed doors. And in fact, I don't even enjoy, watching on the TV a game that is played behind closed doors because you don't have any atmosphere, you don't have the crowd. And I'm quite sure, of course, that it's not as good for the players because they haven't got their own supporters behind them, urging them on. So I just really don't think that is an option. Of course, then I have to say, well, if we've got to get this season finished and decided, and of course we've got UEFA now saying that if the season isn't finished in England, then none of the clubs will be able to play in the Champions League. Of course, that's just typically UEFA being out of touch with the whole football world. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't like playing behind closed doors. But I do think that we need to get the season finished if we can. And one of the great suggestions I think that came up is let's more or less forget about this season and start next season with the same number of points that all the clubs have now.
Which was my video that I made a few weeks ago, and I said that was my suggestion, was as a way of compromise, so that we don't upset the Liverpool fans. They still have a 22-point lead.
We should
relegation. Well, I know. I was trying to be very objective and impartial, and it did take me a few days to put that together. But that was my point about cancelling the season now. And if that meant City don't have the Carabao Cup and the Community Shield on record, fine. I'm happy with it. I don't care. And the fact of everyone starts on the same points next season. There are some obviously caveats in that. It's like, well, who goes through to the Champions League and blah blah blah. I mean, I'm sure we can work it out. We're all adults supposedly in there. But UEFA, you did mention the word UEFA. FIFA have actually come out today with Gianni Infantino, and he's come out today saying, basically, his comments are that football should not, under any circumstances, restart until it's absolutely safe for everybody. So it's great that Infantino is coming out from the top. Whether that will really mean anything to the likes of Seferin and others, but Infantino's basically come out and said it should not start until it's absolutely safe for everybody. And he means everybody, not just players and coaches and things like that, but everybody, which means hopefully, if he was inferring with fans in the stadium, rather than behind closed doors, I don't know. But Alan, what are your thoughts on the whole? Where does football go?
It's a difficult one because finishing the season, I can't see it happening. I just think there's too many issues and problems at the moment with health issues. It's going to take a long time, especially in the UK and Europe, for the European leagues as well, to finish their leagues. But then you've got the spin of the financial implications of TV rights paying the clubs the money that they require. Premier League's obviously huge with the money involved in it, and then they're saying they're not going to pay for the rest of the season. So it's a really difficult one because which direction you take, something's going to have to fall down. And that's the problem. Like City are in a fortunate position with the amount of money they've got that they could probably carry it. But even so, you got teams like Bournemouth, Brighton, the smaller clubs in the Premier League, which could cripple the Burnley. We know that really would be a huge problem for them if they lose money.
We're reading something today, a financial article on football today, and I was reading some of the figures. I mean, Bournemouth in particular are so heavily reliant. I think the quote is around about 80% of their income and budget is all to do with TV money and what they get, which means that they're really relying heavily on that payment. Otherwise, they're in real financial difficulties, which sort of suggests to me a point we're going to come to with FFP and everything else. Is that a good business model? But we'll come back to that one maybe in the next question. So, go on, Alan. I mean, what were you saying?
Well, I can't see how we can finish it. I really can't. Because, if there's no fans in the stadium, that's one thing. But if players still get coronavirus or the flu or whatever, which is going around at the moment, then you've got issues if players are going down with it. Because, one, they've got to go back to training, so at least 2 or 3 weeks training before they can start playing any sort of games. So I just personally can't see how they can finish it now. Well, we're in. I just can't see it. I just cannot see what's going to happen. Not just for the conference reason, but also fans being able to afford to go to games after this.
Yeah.
It's happening in the UK and even here. In Australia, people are not going to have disposable income to attend football games, and there's problems now with people paying season tickets, on the direct debit function, because people budget for it, especially in Manchester.
Absolutely.
I know plenty of people in Manchester, North East Manchester, where majority of the City fans come from, are not in a financial situation where they can afford to spend willy-nilly. And, going back, there's going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years where they're going to be struggling. So it's not just about playing the games, it's everything else that goes with it.
Yeah. I mean, my point today is on the whole thing at the moment and this discussion surrounding football. And I find it, I don't know. I mean, my conversation, like I said today, I had with Ian was, I find it absolutely unbelievable that there are so many businesses, small to mid businesses, potentially going to the wall because we can't interact with our clients. We can't do this. We can't do the other. Why is football any different to suggest that they can take a group of 40, 50 people, put them in a hotel for a couple of weeks and surround them by this? And why is football any different when we have rules and regulations in place in this lockdown that businesses, pubs can't open, restaurants can't open, they're going to the wall. Small businesses, mid-sized businesses are going to the wall because they can't do it. Is there suddenly a caveat in the government's rules that suggests that football is any different to any other business? What?
No.
Why should they be allowed to even contemplate taking a group of employees and putting them in a hotel so they can continue with their business? But I couldn't take 20 pilots and put them in a hotel for 2 weeks and say, we'll still finish the course, just go into lockdown for 2 weeks, make sure you're safe, and then we'll do the training. Can't do that.
I know. I blame a lot of it to do with the media, because they're asking questions to these guys in UEFA in the Premier League, and they're prompting answers just to write something, because at the moment they're just spouting absolute rubbish in the papers about anything they can write. So if they've got something to write about, they will. It's like City must have probably signed about 700 players in the last 2 months. You read the paper every day. It's just ridiculous, and the comments they're making about players, about the Premier League, about the way forward, about what's going to happen. If any delegate will say, well, this might be an idea, this might be an idea, they take that as gospel, and it's not. I think a lot of people are thinking out loud. I think no one really knows, because no one's been in this situation before. Yeah. So, no one really knows until we get rid of it totally. But you've then got a situation where, and I'm going to put this to you, Champions League. Let's say the UK gets rid of it, the world gets rid of coronavirus. Our country is going to allow flights in from anywhere for 6 months after. I don't think we are.
This is obviously aviation's my business, and we have absolutely no idea. And this is from the CAA and everything. We have no idea when. My business industry doesn't even talk about dates. They have absolutely clueless when this is going to happen. So how can football think the 25th of May or the 5th of June, or putting dates on things when? Well, hold on, we can't even transport people safely. How can you do it, and why should you be exempt from doing it when other industries, other businesses, other small businesses are not allowed to do it? They will go to the wall. And my point to Ian's vlog, and I'm sorry, Ian, if I am quoting your brilliant podcast today, was he did ask the hypothetical question, sitting on the fence as an interviewer like we do, and he said, would you not think it would morally boost the morale of the nation if they got, even if it was behind closed doors? And obviously most people were saying no, and he was only asking the usual question from being devil's advocate. And my point to Ian today was the fact that, I tell you what would be a morale boost for me and for everybody else, was rather than football being played behind closed doors on TV, let's get everything safe as quickly as possible and get people back in the workforce, get businesses being paid, get people getting a weekly wage and a monthly wage and things, and getting back to some sort of normality where they can go and give their mum and dad a hug, or they can go and interact with him. That's a morale boost, not watching some Sky TV programme that they're still getting paid for and the Premier League's getting paid for, that they can pay clubs, that they can pay 250 grand to a footballer to do. That won't give me a morale boost. Get me back to work, get my employees back to work, get me mixing with my family again. Yeah. That would be a morale boost to me.
I'll tell you what, Andy. A lot of people's attitudes towards footballers is going to change. Because they've seen them on social media in the big houses with the trophy wives and have all these cars and nice things, and they're enjoying themselves, keeping fit, but they're refusing to take pay drops because their contract says so, and people in the real world are suffering financially, and are going to suffer for 3 years minimum.
I mean, I would argue back on that side of it to obviously balance out the debate with that question, which is, I'm sure there are. I do think there are a lot of footballers who have already been doing an awful lot probably in the background. Yeah, a lot of footballers that are more than happy to give up 30% of their wages. I do think that the organisations and the agents, I think the PFA and the agents are too heavily in. I think if you just left it to the players, whether it be Jordan Henderson is the main one who was coming out of this smelling of roses and whatever else, or Kevin De Bruyne or whoever, if you just left it to the players, I'm sure the players would be able to easily sort this out and say, yeah, we'll take 30% pay cut, no problem whatsoever. I mean, every single Premier League player could easily take 30%, no problem whatsoever. And nearly all Championship players. The lower down the leagues, it starts getting a little bit different. But I'm sure Premier League players, I reckon 99.9% of them would go, no problem with that whatsoever. But when you've got agents, hold on a minute, don't be seen to be doing that because it could affect this, and then it could affect your contract, and it could. If everyone just went, shut up. If we want to give 30% of our wages, we're going to do it. And I don't care what the repercussions are down the line. We'll deal with that. Like all businesses, like all people on the street are doing. We don't know what's happening. We'll deal with it when we get there. But there's so many PFAs. There's so many bloody agents all having their say because they're thinking, don't do that because I'll lose my cut. And, what if this? And it could affect your contract. Well, it comes back to this again. It's all to do with this. And that's why I find I am day by day, gradually distancing and removing myself or moving further away from football as a love from what I have, because I am now. I've always been I've never been the cynical one when others have said, "Oh, it's crap, Premier League crap. It's all about money and it's about this." I've always gone, no, it's about passion. It's about going there and And as this coronavirus has come in and everything that's happening, and I'm reading articles in the papers every day, I am going day by day. I am going just that little inch away from football and thinking it's just it's repugnant. It is just. I'm finding it sickening that you are even considering taking footballers who are human beings away from their families, blocking them in a hotel for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Yeah. Just so that you can put a game on behind closed doors so that you'll get your money that you can pass on to this. There is plenty of money swashing around in the Premier League, their own bank account, 1.5 billion by all accounts. They could put the hand in their pocket and save the whole 93 teams that are currently in the Premier League to the National League. They could do that if they wanted to, with the help of the players dropping 30% and the owners easily, but they won't. It's all contractual. It's all about contracts and things. And I find it disgusting. And it's taken me further away from football than I've ever been in my lifetime as it stands right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is going to make me, it is definitely when it resumes, it's definitely when they say whether football resets, it's certainly going to reset for me because I'll never look at football again like I will when it resumes.
Other things as well, as far as City are concerned, next season, the season after, they're going to have to rethink about ticket prices and season ticket cards, how much that's going to be. Because I'll tell you something, if they try and charge what they're charging right now, that people are not going to go. It's dead simple. They're going to have to, whether the league as a whole I'm
Yeah.
going to do what the Bundesliga have done and just set prices, home and away. I think that's the only way they can do it for the next 3 or 4 years. I can't see them doing it.
You know, people are still getting £95 a month taken out of their bank accounts, you know, for football.
I've still got my season ticket.
Yeah, it's no football, and I'm not blaming City for this, because I know they're waiting to see what happens here and things like that. But I mean, this is why I think if a decision is made on the season now and say, right, that's it, we'll reset however we're going to reset, but that is it for now. You know, general working class people can have their money back for games that they haven't seen, and I'm sure City will happily take the hit for refunding that. City are not one of the teams, but I can understand other clubs are going to be in difficult positions. It is a mess. It is an absolute mess, and I don't think the powers that be are dealing with this at all well. I really, really don't. And there just seems to be too many fingers in too many pies, and nobody seems to be able to be making a human decision rather than a footballing decision on this for me. But Stephen, your thoughts? Any other thoughts on it? I mean, any other suggestions, or you know?
And Andy, I think you hit the nail on the head there, where you said you know, football fans are becoming a little bit disenchanted, and this coronavirus, of course, has brought that in. But you know, in our supporters club, you know, we get to talk to the guys, and a lot of them are saying right now that they've never felt as far away and you know, from football as they have. It's not only you know, the money, but it's also, for example, you know, another topic is VAR, which takes a lot of enjoyment away from the game. So I think there's going to be some massive challenges for football moving forward. You know, when we're all back together. Because the game has changed, and you know, this is all about the evolution of the game, and there are going to be some massive changes. What about all the players now in the Premier League, you know, who come from Europe? Are they going to think about, do they really want to play in England now? What they might want to stay, you know, back in Brazil, back in Italy, back in Argentina, because of future travel restrictions. And looking what's happened in this case. So I think the Premier League's going to be affected in that way as well.
I mean, well, you brought up the point before, and here's a question for you, because we know the likes of Edison is back in Brazil with his family and things like that. If there's travel restrictions and there's no flights for the next 6 months, and the Premier League want to play games behind closed doors in June, how does Edison get back to the UK to play in that game?
Yeah.
We just had in the news today. We just had a private, I think it was a Learjet that took off from Farnborough, I think it was, to go to a massive villa in the south of France with a load of billionaires on it. They were all going to stay there for this ride out this. As soon as they landed, they were met by all the police. They were all there, and they all just went basically, turn around, piss off back to London, and sent them straight back. So even private jets are being, no, you can't fly into here. There is no flights.
So the Sheikh can't fly his private jets to pick Edison up then.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. So, I mean, if we're talking about when are these flights going to resume, how does Edison get back to the UK to play here, or any player? Because a load of them have gone home. They have been allowed originally to go home. I'm sure, as in football, there's always some way that they'll get them back here and blah blah blah, where money's involved and things. You know, grease somebody's palm and make sure that they get here for whatever reasons. But it's interesting. There is no easy answer, and this is the problem. And my point on this is, I just wish that if players are doing everything they possibly can, and I know City so far, and United and others, maybe not Liverpool, you know, even though they went back, they went back on that. But you know, if football clubs in general are doing everything they possibly can to support the efforts of the NHS and frontline workers, and you know, taking pay cuts to save clubs and things like that, then why can't the people at the top, like the Premier League and Sky? I know Sky said they might not want the £371 million back this season, and that would be a massive support. Of course it would. But why is like the PFA and the Premier League, who have got billions in the bank accounts, why are they not doing more? Why are they not thinking, you know what, it's not about money? And maybe fans might come out of this in 6 months' time, whenever it starts again, and go, fair play to you. At least we've got football back, and we know it's not being run by a cartel just thinking about money. Because if it does, I think it's going to, like you said, I think it's going to put a lot of fans off. We know City fans have already said, I'm not renewing my season ticket next year. No way. Yeah. Not after this. So, money. We're going to move on to money, which is the next point. And this is the point you wanted to talk about. And this is obviously, you wrote, which I read, a wonderful article. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll talk to you off camera about the article and if there's anything we could do with it to promote it, because I've read it a couple of times. I read it when Alan sent it to me, and then I read it again today as a bit of a reminder, and it's a very, very, very good read. And it's a breakdown of the whole FFP and UEFA and CAS and, you know, everything to do with the I was going to say witch hunt, maybe, yeah, witch hunt with UEFA over Manchester City, and that was written by you, Stephen.
Yeah, it was, and it was, Andy, and basically I wrote the article because as the secretary of the supporters club, a lot of people were asking me, you know, what's going on. And so I decided to, you know, just summarise it, and then it just kept going and going and going, and you know, because there's so much involved, and ended up about 10 pages. And but the point of the whole article is that really what we see in the newspapers is just the tip of the iceberg. The newspapers only report what they want to. They do it from a negative point of view from City. So what we wanted to do is put together an article that would allow people to understand the whole story behind it, and then make, you know, an objective decision. And not just for City fans, but for all the other supporters, right, who are coming down on City, because let's be honest, they don't know the full story. Yeah. And if anybody can, you know, read the article, it's called Financial Fair Play or Foul, and it's on the Bolt from the Blue website now, and it's certainly worth reading. And you know, there's a lot to discuss, but what's happened to City for me is it's been a trial by media, and basically we've been found guilty by the media. Everybody's jumped up on that because they don't know the full story. They don't know. For example, we talk about our friends at UEFA, who really, let's face it, I think everybody knows this. We're not paranoid. They've got it in for City. Yeah. And yet when you look at UEFA, who are they in reality? You know, it's an organisation which runs 3 football competitions in Europe. They're not the world's football police, as they like to put themselves up as. And you know, they in fact can't even meet their own financial fair play test themselves. Yeah. Which is ridiculous. They're putting standards upon clubs they can't meet. It is, unfortunately, an organisation which you know, is affected by a lot of corruption. It's not a clean organisation, and you know, neither is FIFA, and most of the, you know, the world's sporting bodies are, you know, are corrupt, and yet here they are talking about a club like Manchester City saying that we want to ban you from playing in Europe, when in fact, you know, City have done in this case everything right. You know, they had the sanctions, they obeyed the sanctions, they did everything that was wanted of them. They were given back part of the fine by UEFA because they obeyed all the rules, and then 6 years later, because of an article in a dodgy newspaper and on dodgy websites, which have no credibility again, they decide to reopen the case. You know, it's just not right what has happened. And so we put together this article, hope everybody gets to read it, and it will give, you know, a different perspective on it. And it's not just from a City supporter's point of view, it's for everyone to read. Get the full story, because guess what, guys? This could happen to your club.
Yeah, and like I said, it's very it's very thorough, and I think it would be wonderful if maybe we'd do another video, just reading through and showing the viewers it as well, because it's a real step-by-step approach, and because a lot of people get turned off with the financial fair play. One, understanding it. Two, well, it don't really affect me per se, and three, you're talking about CAS and the CFCB, you're talking about the investigatory chamber and the adjudicatory chamber, and what's that? And people sort of in the end can switch off. Reading through your article, it's so this inventory of a timeline of events and put together, and it's not subjective, so it's not been written in a, well, I'm Stephen and I think. It's very much, these are statements, these are actual statements by facts. Yeah, they are facts. They are actually quoted statements that have been made, and I think it's a really, really interesting read. Like I said, when Alan sent it to me a number of weeks ago, I read it, and then I just thought today, I'm going to dig it out and I'll read it again, just in case anything stood out. And I did read it again, thinking, God, this is a real nice timeline. And I've read an awful lot. If you've seen the videos that we've done on the channel with Colin and others, I mean, I've spoke to Jonathan Northcroft of the Sunday Times about it on the channel as well. And so I've done my research into it, but that's probably the best article I've read. That actually, if you're not really up to speed with FFP and UEFA and the process, it's probably the best article I've read that actually sets everything out in simplistic terms to follow, but everything is fact, and that it's not, like I said, sometimes you read subjective pieces about opinions and things, and that's all right, but we all have different opinions, but these are all just, this is where it is.
A lot of City fans get confused with FFP and the charges that we've actually got to answer to. And what City fans have got to realise is, all right, having a go at FFP, which we all disagree with. But the two charges that we've got are what we've got to answer to. Nothing to do with FFP. Because we can argue, and so can City's lawyers argue about FFP. That has to be put to one side for a later date. At some point, City and other clubs have got to go to the Supreme Court, get rid of it. It's the only way forward. But as far as City is concerned, can UEFA prove the sponsorship money City declared was not sponsorship money? That's the first question that they've got to ask. Can they prove that? Can City prove they did fully cooperate with UEFA financial control body? They've got to prove to that. There's two charges that they have to prove that they did. And they're the only two charges they've got.
This is nothing to do with changing FFP rules and FFP. This is an important point with the whole the CAS appeal. Is we're not talking about the concept of FFP per se. We're talking about these charges which are different. They are different.
Exactly.
Yeah, they are very, very different. And so we're going to have to face this two charges. We're going to have to face those. And
we've got to prove it.
Prove it with
evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Which City do say that they've got evidence per se. And I know there's the backup. And I know one thing, it was interesting in your article, when all this first originally came out, there was the whole we all debated about the fact of, but these are hacked emails, so it can't be in a court of law. They can't produce that, not in a court of law and things like that. I actually did some research, and in America, there have been several cases, even hacked emails have been admissible in a court of law, and they're there. They have been hacked. But they are rare. They are really rare. But this is different because we're talking about CAS, and we're not talking about a court of law per se.
But of course, what we know is, of course, that CAS has, in previous cases, accepted evidence which might have been illegal in a normal court of law. So that's what I tried to explain in the article, what it's about and what we're up against. And we really have got some massive challenges. to face. But we'll wait and see, because none of us know. Let's stick to the facts, and let's wait and see.
So overall, then, obviously, we don't even know yet, because obviously the CAS appeal date has been delayed, and they've got a backlog of this, that, and the other. And obviously, this is going to have a knock-on effect, because unless the CAS appeal for everybody else that is prior to our date hearing with CAS, unless they're heard via a medium like this, and that's done, and whether that's admissible and acceptable under their rules and regulations, and whether City would say, because City have come out obviously and said we want to bring this on ASAP, because they're confident that we will overturn this. So there's no issue with City sort of delaying it, but whether CAS have got that manpower and timed with this backlog to do this, it's what if football was to resume in June? Does that mean, but they're playing behind closed doors, so the end of the season could resume before CAS can actually reconvene, and then they've got a backlog, and it's like, well, when does it? This is how messy it's all getting. I mean, it's like, when do they resume their original delayed CAS appeals before they even get to Manchester City's case? And how long will that take? And will this be next year? Will it be middle of next summer? Will they say, right, you're going to have to just continue as normal until we get to hear this at some point? I have no idea. I'll be honest with you, I've got no idea.
They're going to have to hear the case before any sort of Champions League draw, because then UEFA are liable for a huge sue, counter sue from the City, if the City win the case.
Yeah, I mean, so the point is the way it's going. This is my point on it. Is the way it's going. If this ridiculous idea of football is going to resume in the Premier League behind closed doors in June, July time, well, let's just say that does happen. Yeah. That can still happen with everyone still in lockdown. Businesses are still in lockdown. They can't go about their daily business, which means CAS can't, unless there's these remote hearings. So football might resume, the Premier League might resume, and come to a conclusion. Let's say, if they do decide to do it, and the government somehow give the Premier League some exemption that nobody else in the UK is allowed to have, except for footballers now and football teams. Well, CAS still can't, because they're still under lockdown. And when do they get together? And they've still got a backlog of hearings. So you could be talking December time. Well, by then the trials should already have been made with the Champions League. And do you see this whole thing? It's like, well, it's all becoming a bit ridiculous. So I mean, does somebody need to step up and go, right, fine, sorry, UEFA, we're not going to hear this until next summer. So everything stands until next summer. We're going to listen to this next summer, and if it's 2 years and we agree with you, we'll give them a 2-year ban from the summer of 2021 onwards for 2023. I just can't see where this is going. It's just a mess, an absolute mess.
It's like when you get the letters being sent by Arsenal and other clubs signing it to try and stop us from playing in Champions League next season. That is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I honestly do believe that a lot of that was generated by the press as well.
Oh, without shadow of doubt, and it does make you wonder, doesn't it, that these clubs who could do it, and this is the thing, is that when we know we have our clubs that we dislike for whatever reasons, whether it be United because they're our competitors, or now Liverpool because we just don't like their fan base, basically, and things like that. But you now have the likes of Burnley writing letters to the Premier League to get us. Well, I'll tell you what, Burnley. What if Sheikh Mansour was the only person to bail you out before your club goes bust? I bet you'd take the money then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And this is the irony of it all. These are clubs who have done this. There's only Sheffield United who didn't do it. Well, there could have been one or two others, but mainly nearly everybody wanted City
from the top 10.
Yeah. Well, they'd soon take City's money if they said bail us out. And leads me back to the FFP argument: is where do we go with FFP?
Well, I mean, one of the things that UEFA have got to look at, Andy, is quite simply that the way that the financial fair play model that they have enforced upon everyone is, in fact, a flawed model, because, in fact, what it does is it allows the accumulation of debt.
Which I want to say now to everybody, and we might do something on this article, and I promise you I'm going to speak to Stephen off camera and see whether we can do something with it. This, for me, is a really, really interesting sort of section of the document, and it's something that we all talk about. Well, United can be in debt. Wait until you read this part of it, because this really hammers home, I think, the real crux of the whole argument surrounding FFP. So, sorry, Stephen, go on.
Yeah, no. So there it is. I mean, the fact is, financial fair play has basically encouraged clubs to get into debt, and it's all been fine for clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona, AC Milan, and those big clubs. Manchester United, in particular, who've had owners who didn't want to put money into the club like ours. They wanted to take money out, and of course, what has done under the financial fair play, it's left clubs vulnerable. And then, of course, none of us could see coronavirus. But there you go. That's what's happened. Those clubs that are in debt are now in jeopardy. And that's a system which has been put forward and in fact, enforced by UEFA. It just doesn't work. It's not financial fair play at all. And look, I certainly agree, and I think most reasonably minded football fans would say that there should be some form of financial fair play. I mean, let's be honest about it. When some footballers are earning £300,000 a week, they're earning in 1 week what it might take the average guy in the street 10 years to make. That it's gone crazy, and something needs to be done. What went wrong, though, is when UEFA had the opportunity to actually bring in a financial fair play system that would have worked. They didn't do it because they wanted to protect the old guard. They wanted to protect Manchester United, Real Madrid, and their old football club family. And they did that. And of course, now the whole of the football industry is paying the price for UEFA's ineptitude. And really, Alan and I have spoken about this. We think that perhaps when this is all over, we should look at something outside of UEFA. Something that's better, something that's run more by the clubs rather than an organisation that in fact should stick to running.
So like an independent financial body that looks after that, which are not part of voting on World Cups and voting on European competitions. Their own completely independent.
Yeah. And from the clubs, and then you would find that the potential for corruption, of course, would be far less, and the game would just be better. So one thing moving forward, I think that they may be the opportunity to sort the game out and to make it better, and to stop the average fans like us getting disenchanted with the whole game. Because that's what UEFA is basically doing. And it's okay for the clubs like, United and Arsenal to be writing off and saying, oh, yes, Man City. But at the end of the day, you know what they've got to do? If they want to be better than City, they can do it on the football pitch, not in the courtroom. And that's all we're asking, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if I was a United fan sat here, my argument back would be the standard argument. Hold on, we generate our own money, and that's absolutely fine. And I've got no problem with that argument per se, because United generate huge amounts of money. We know that, and we know other clubs do that as well. But it can't be right for owners to just take, and still leave and leverage debt against the organisation, the company, the brand, whatever it may be. That can't be financially stable. And I don't care, I think you turn around in there, I think in your article you talk and people said, other people have argued, United fans, yeah, but it's just like having a mortgage. And it's just like, and you argue in your article about the fact, well, it's not if you then remortgage after a year and have more debt to you. And then something like, which isn't in your article, but something like this happens.
Yeah.
Where does that leave you? And this is where you've got the likes of Bournemouth, who are really so over-reliant on Premier League TV revenue and money and things like that. Are you telling me that doesn't influence their decision making when it comes to, should we play behind closed doors and we can have some money and we can do this over players' welfare? Really?
Well, that's it. They're locked in, aren't they? They've got.
Well, it's a whole knockdown effect from the owners at Bournemouth through to the players, through to everybody involved with the club. I mean, it's just if we don't do this, we're all buggered, And it's. Are we making decisions for the right reasons, or are we making decisions for the wrong thing? I'll give you a quick analogy before we finish. And this was, I mentioned this to Ian in my conversation today, and we were talking about the whole thing surrounding it and the Premier League, potentially forcing players to play behind closed doors and all this type of thing. And I said to him, I am that disenchanted with football and the regulators and things like not just UEFA, but the Premier League themselves and Sky and everybody else that talk about money. And we were talking about forcing players behind closed doors, to play football without any fans. And I said, last night in the UK, I recorded something on Sky that was on the other day. It was Richard Dimbleby was doing a Back to Belsen, and it was about Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And his father was a news reporter when the Brits first went into Belsen and liberated Belsen, and I'd been to Belsen when I was a teenager. My cousin was a colour sergeant major with the Queen's Tank Regiment, and I went to Fallinbostel and he took me to Belsen when I was 13, 14, and I'll never ever forget it. It was an experience it was just horrendous, but watching the programme, his last comments were about what his father said in his last radio and TV broadcast. And he said, even when the camp guards, and there were some absolute horrendous monsters there, were taken into the first ever war crimes trial, which happened, and that was all about Belsen, about 40 miles in a town 40 miles away. Even some of the camp guards, after everything, all the evidence and everything went against them, came out with, we were only doing what we were told to do. And I'm thinking, it's on a different human scale. But if football clubs are only going to do what they're told to do, what if one of their footballers contracts it and dies, or passes it on to their parents and they die and they do? Yeah. Is their argument going to be, well, we were just doing what we were told to do by the Premier League, or by my club, or by my director, or by my manager, or by my, and you just think, what is the cost of human life in all of this? And this is what's making me get further and further away from football with all what's going on at the moment. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know. With regards to the whole coronavirus, with regards to UEFA and FFP, it's like such a minefield. But I do promise you, we will do something on this article, because it is one that you must read. It's absolutely brilliant. It is a great read, Stephen. So thank you for putting that together, because there must have been an awful lot of work went into that. I don't know. Give us a clue. How long did it take you?
It started off as just a single-page article and ended up going on, and it took I think 6 weeks to put it together.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It kept changing it and sending it to me to read.
It is. Well, I was reading it thinking, bloody hell, there's some research gone into this, because it is just it's so factual. It's not, like I said, anyone can write a subjective opinion piece. This is really factual. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant read.
It is factual, and for example, one of the big parts of it was actually getting the annual reports from UEFA, and checking the statistics and checking their results, and showing that how they work. And then, there's two graphs in there, one of the financial performance of Manchester City, which goes up, and up, and one of UEFA, which goes down, down.
Absolutely.
And of course, UEFA's is going to get even worse now. And there you go. They've got to look at themselves and say, well, we can't even pass our own financial fair play test.
and I think that's one of the foundations of the whole document, isn't it? They can't even pass their own. Yet they're imposing making up additional ones and revisiting stuff 6 years later.
I'll tell you what, Andy, I had two of my friends who, one's a massive Chelsea fan and one's a a huge United fan. And both educated guys on their own businesses, but they're obviously biased towards their club, which is fine. And they, like everybody else, knew the basics of what was going on, and wanted City out. But I said, will you read this article and let me know what you think? And to be fair to them, they read it right through, and they've changed their opinion immediately.
Really?
Read it. Completely changed their opinion towards UEFA and to us. They said, that's just rubbish. Chelsea fans said, look, UEFA have done us a bad turn, and they got it overturned, but they had to have 6 months without transfer ban. But their opinions, the Man United fan said he basically was just criticising their owners, and he's a huge United fan. And like I say, if more people read that and just took it as it is, as facts, a lot of people would change their minds.
I think, and that's it. I think a lot of people just read what they read in the headlines in the media and thing, and we know, we've seen it over the last 12 months. We've seen in social media, we've seen appeals by journalists saying, please buy a newspaper and please buy this, and their jobs are on the line. Their jobs are they are panicking at the moment over, their own jobs, their own livelihoods and things like that. And, maybe, it's come back to bite them on the arse, all of this, because you're just getting the general football fan just turning off and going, screw you. After what you've done to us over the last 2 years, do you think I'm going to be interested in reading your articles? Don't think so.
Andy, a journalist who shall remain, we won't mention his name, he read my article and he said to me, he said, Steve, is this true? I didn't know half of this. And what surprised me about that is here's a journalist who's writing articles on Manchester City for national newspapers, and he didn't know half of this. Yeah. And I'm sure that helped change his mind as well. And that's the whole idea behind the paper is hey, just read it, because I don't come up with a judgment at the end. Basically, I'll just give you the facts and say, make your own mind up. But at least now you do have all the facts. Yeah. And I think that's very important. And, we've seen Manchester United, Chelsea, Tottenham supporters all change their mind when they've read this paper. And so it's on the bolt from the blue. And, hopefully we can do something in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd be really interested in doing, whether it's a read through or whether it's something that we do a bit of visual and a bit of read through with some highlighted area key things, something like that. I think it would be really interesting, and that way people can, because not everybody wants to just. Some people want to visually see stuff, others want to just listen to it. So it's trying to find a balance between the two on there. But I can promise you, it's a wonderful, wonderful read, and we'll definitely do something soon as soon as. So if you're watching this video, in the next day or two, you'll be able to see something about the article and really sort of whether it's audio and visual on it as well, because it's a wonderful read. So. Right, let's finish. I'm going to ask you a question just to finish off the top of my head rather than sort of notes that I made earlier. Just to finish on something more cheery or talk about football. Let's talk about football in general. 2 questions. Pep Guardiola, is he going to be around next season and beyond? Both of you give me who you think should be gone and who should come in at the club. There you go. Bit of football news. Yeah, players. Yeah. So first off, Pep, do you think he'll be here next season and beyond, or do you think he's going to finish at the end of his contract? That's to you, Stephen, and to you, Alan. Second, I'll come back to you individually to say about players out. Who do you think should leave? And who do you think we should be going for? So I'll come to Alan, you first. Pep Guardiola.
I think he'll be here next season. That's definite. I think he's absolutely critical to re-signing for the next 2-3 years after that, if he's going to build a team.
Let's hope so.
That's, I'm praying he does.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, it will affect players who are currently there and players who they can get.
Okay, Stephen.
I certainly think that all things being equal, that Pep will stay with City, because I think one of the things that Pep has shown us is that he is a man of principle. And you have a look, for example, at the donation he made to help coronavirus in Spain. So, but there are other things that come into this. For example, travel restrictions and everything like that, which, as I said earlier, will make a lot of European players, managers think about whether they actually want to work in England now, and we have to face that. But I'm confident that Pep will fully support City in every way he can, because I see Pep as a real blue. He's one of the guys. He loves the badge, and that's what it's about. So yeah, with the players, one of the things, some City players are obviously coming to the end of their cycle, and brilliant players. We've recently seen Vincent Kompany go, and now we have a look at David Silva, and even, dare I say, Sergio Aguero. And so they're going to have to be replaced. Yeah. And we wish them all well in the future. They've done a magnificent job for us. They'll always be Blues, but we have to accept, the team is going to need some significant rebuilding moving forward.
Okay. Alan?
Players going out, I would say, unfortunately, John Stones has seen his time. It's frustrating because he's got loads of ability and he's just not come up to scratch. Otamendi's got to go, one of his age, and I think he's no pace now, and he makes far too many mistakes. People know my opinion on him. I think we need another left back. I'm convinced we need. Mendy's not always fit all the time unless he can prove that. David Silva's obviously going to go, and we've got to question mark whether we replace him or not. I think he will do. I think Foden will come in, he'll get his chance, but he's going to produce. But we need someone there who can come in and do the job as well if he's not there. I do think we need either this year, this summer, or the summer after, we need to replace Sergio. He's not getting any younger. The guy's a god to City fans now. He'll always be that way. But we have to move forward. I think that needs to be. I think Sané's going. I cannot see.
You think he is?
I think he wants to go back home, and that's fine. That's up to him. And we need to look at what we can do in that area. But a lot of it depends on if we're in Europe or not. Kevin De Bruyne needs to be able to stay. He's 28. If we get banned for 2 years, I think he'll go. If it's only 1 year, I think he'll stay. And if we don't, obviously he'll stay. That's not going to be a problem. But a lot relies on Pep being there. The players will play for Pep and stay for Pep. No danger.
Okay, Stephen, players out, players in.
Look, I love Sané. I think he's one of the most exciting players to watch, and watching him play live is totally different than on TV. Just a remarkable player. I'd love to see us keep him, but I do think that it'll be difficult, and European clubs want him. And let's face it, with all the coronavirus and everything like that, it'd be very tempting for him to say, "Well, look, I'll just go and play in Germany," and we say that. So I'd like to see him. Kevin De Bruyne, look, we've got to keep him if we can, obviously, and I don't think there's much chance of him leaving anyway. And talking about getting banned from Europe, all of these players are actually going to wait for that decision. They're not going to do anything until CAS. So let's not even talk about them leaving. It's just a case for me of rebuilding a team that has aged in certain areas. Otamendi, Alan doesn't like him. He's famous for that here in Australia. We all wind him up. I think Otamendi's been a great player for us.
I'm with you.
So look, let's wait and see, and just replace the players that have come to the end of their useful playing life at the Premier League level.
When you say that, though, I mean, when you think about that, I mean, Fernandinho, how good has Fernandinho been for Manchester City?
Fernandinho's been magnificent, but it's over for him, isn't it, at that level?
But we're saying about replacing players. You got Fernandinho from an impact point of view, David Silva. we've just lost Vinny, and we're going to be losing Sergio. I mean, they're four. I mean, there's your centre back, your centre midfielder, your most creative player, and your best striker. I mean, if you took that away from a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, a United, a Liverpool, or whatever, these are players we're gonna, we're all right. We had Laporte, but we've not replaced Vinny. We've still got we don't know about Rodri yet. He could be a lot better next season. Could be. I don't know whether he'll ever be as good as Fernandinho, because for me he's still one of the best centre defensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But trying to replace David Silva is going to be nigh on impossible. And then you've got, how do you replace Sergio Aguero? I mean, it's like they're four massive players to try and replace. I mean, it's going to be huge.
So,
it's going to be huge.
I'm looking at players we can buy. I certainly think we need to buy 2 centre halves, not 1, 2. Because one, we lost Vinny. We saw the penalty of that when I was with you at Brighton game when Laporte got injured. Yeah, that killed our season. It killed our season.
Yeah.
So we've got one in the making, Garcia. I rate him. I personally think he could be a very, very good player for City moving forward. Not only at centre half, but maybe in that defensive midfield position where he's a passer, because he's not a tall guy. I think he's the one, but we definitely need 2 centre halves, and they need to be world class. Because the one thing that when we've had 10 years of success, I don't think we've had that good a defence all the time. Watching City, I think they've been okay, but we've relied on the forward players getting lots and lots of goals.
I think on that we've also relied heavily on Fernandinho playing that central defensive midfield role in front of those centre backs and defenders. Yeah. We've really missed that, but Pep is so stubborn; he won't go back to it. He just won't.
No, he won't. So we need to replace centre halves. There's no question about that. Fernandinho can play as a backup role for that defensive midfielder. I'm still got question marks on Rod Running's pace. I think he's great with the ball. Yeah. But when he's not got the ball, I don't think he's struggling with the pace of the league.
And sometimes with those roles, it's about, because Fernandinho was never rapid, but it's reading the red. So he knew I don't need to be 10 yards forward. I can just sit here, which give him 10 yards on somebody attacking. Where I think at the moment Rodri's so sort of physical and in about that he's potentially missing the speed of the Premier League. And maybe another year he might realise that.
It took Bernardo Silva and David Silva a year.
Yeah, of course.
Let's look back to when they first came. It did take them a year. Yeah. Martinez looks a good one for going forward from Milan.
Inter.
From Inter. But now a centre forward's going to cost a lot of money. Yeah. We're talking well over 100 million for a centre forward. We've just got to trust the club and Pep to pick the right ones. There is a few. We're going to. I'm hoping we get, if Sani does go, I'm hoping we get well over 100 million for him. They're talking about a cut price. The club should tell Bayern where to go on that one. It needs to be able, because we can use that money to spend at the back and in midfield, no question, and promotion it towards a new centre forward. Do what Liverpool did. I hate to say it, when they sold Suarez and whoever and Coutinho, they used that money to go and buy Van Dijk and the goalkeeper. We need to start doing that sort of deals, because the one thing City haven't done well in the past is when they've brought these players in and then they've let them run the contracts down without getting money for them. We need to start doing better at that to start balancing the books moving forward. And so when players get to certain ages, they need to be offloaded. And that's one thing I think the club have got to do better.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I'd like to say before we go, don't forget to celebrate on Wednesday. You know what day it is on Wednesday?
The 15th of... Is it the 15th of April?
Yep, and that's the day that Manchester City have been the reigning Premier League champions for 2 years.
I sent you the video, didn't I? But you sent me the video of that guy, and I couldn't put it on my Twitter. Alan, I couldn't put that on my Twitter account under the Man City Fan TV. I would have been having hell tonight on by Twitter, but it was very, very funny. Well, listen, I want to say a massive thank you to Stephen and Alan for coming on. I really do appreciate it, guys. Have you got any message to the come to you, Stephen? A message to the City fans, or your fellow fans in Melbourne, your colleagues and friends?
Well, look. The one thing I'd just like to say to City, keep the faith, because we've seen it all, haven't we? We've been the team, who's been. We're going up, we're going down, and let's face it, it's only one way. We're going up from here on in. So stick with it, Blues. Right, we're going to be okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. Alan.
Yeah, I just want to say, keep safe to everyone in Manchester. All my friends in Manchester that know me, all my friends in Melbourne, keep safe. People at home in the UK, and at the end of the day, I am English and I'm proud of it. There's too many people not doing as they're told. Please stay in, please keep safe, and the NHS needs to be protected. But most of all, no more parties. Stay at home. I know it's boring as hell, but we're all the same boat. Plus, it is boring. But keep safe. Same to you, Andy, and everyone, all the City fans at home. Keep safe. Brilliant.
Thank you, guys. Well, listen, this is Andy from Man City Fan TV. I'm with Alan and Stephen, both from the Man City Melbourne supporters branch. And I want to say a massive thank you again. Stay safe, guys. And, the quicker we abide by everything that's going on, the quicker we'll be out of it and we can get football back when it's safe for everybody. But anyway, I want to say again, big thank you. Take care. Don't forget, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and we'll be back with another video tomorrow.